Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Modern Firm. I'm your host, Noah, and today I'm joined by Donna Harris, the founder of Bookkeeping Made Simple. Donna, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to this one.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So, Donna, I'd love to start with your journey. You've worn a lot of hats over the years, from operations to running virtual assistance services. What first led you into the world of bookkeeping? And if you could just take us through everything like that.
Actually, my original major in college was going to be computer science. So that is still kind of where my heart is. But that field moves so quickly that I could not stay in that field and be a mother at the same time. I have 5 children from, gosh, how old are they now? 13 to 22. And I couldn't keep up with that particular field. So I decided that accounting would be something fun to go into. I still get to work with numbers, still get to sit behind my screens and be a little bit introverted. And it's something I understood. So when my younger 2 kids were really little, I decided to go ahead and start my own business because their dad and I had broken up and I needed a way to work and yet still be home with my kids. And I saw accounting as a really good way to do that. So I jumped in. I started off with the virtual assistance company where I was basically an errand runner. I really enjoyed that. But then I met a gentleman that suggested that we start a bookkeeping company together. That company is called Simplify My Books. It is still in business. We still pass a lot of business back and forth, so there's no hard feelings. But he wanted to take his business in a direction differently than where I wanted to go. So rather than fight and argue about it, we decided to just split off and go do our own things and stay.
Yeah. So now that you've worked with, a ton of businesses, especially smaller ones, solo entrepreneurs and small teams of that nature, what are some of the biggest financial mistakes that you see them making on a consistent basis? Is there one mistake that you kind of see across the board, or does it really depend on each and every business?
The one mistake I see across the board is that they don't look at their financials. Most of my clients are very small businesses. There are a lot of solopreneurs just getting started, and they tend to think that if there's money in the bank, that means that their business is profitable. Now, that may or may not be true. Just like if your cash flow's upside down, you may be profitable, but you may have so many liabilities that you're spending all of your cash flow, maybe
Yeah,
backwards, due to the liabilities and not the expenses. And I
yeah,
have a hard time explaining that to small business owners because most of them, I think they learned how to budget like I did when I was a young mom, which was on the back of an envelope. This is how much I get paid, and
yeah.
this is the money that goes out. And accounting for business is a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And that's actually what we see with a lot of businesses, is that they're good at what they do, whatever service or product that they provide, but they don't have a good idea of the financials, right? Is that something that you see pretty often then?
I see that a lot. And I also see a lot of business owners that are completely dependent on their financial advisors, which I think is a terrible idea.
Yeah,
Yes, I went to school for a long time to become an accountant, but that does not mean I have the only answer.
yeah,
It's important for business owners to know things like when their tax deadlines are and what their compliance regulations are and basically what's expected of them, and then use their financial professionals to help them achieve that compliance without being blindly subservient to I'm not sure if that's the right word, but just blindly following what they're saying.
yeah, 100%. A lot of people like to just rely on a tool and just run with it without
Yeah,
actually realizing what it does or how to use it correctly. I mean, it's the same thing
absolutely.
with like every single tool, right? Even AI, for example, that's the business, what I do. A lot of firm owners think that it's just going to completely automate their firm and they'll just be hands off, just collecting money, but you have to leverage it, know how to use it, and not be
Yeah.
blind to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
that was one of the nice things about having majored in computer science before I went into accounting is I understand AI. And you're right, it's not a set it and forget it kind of a thing. I hear a lot of accountants saying it's going to take our jobs, but I really, really strongly disagree with that. Since you work with AI, you'll
Yeah,
know there's nuances to judgment calls that AI does not, it can't make a judgment call.
yeah,
It can't
100%.
can look at patterns,
Yeah,
but it can't think like a human.
yeah, totally.
So there's a place for it, and I love to use it, but um, It's not the bedrock of my business.
Yeah, totally. I always tell this story when I'm speaking with firm owners and whatnot. I worked at an accounting firm and we had this new AI tool that was supposedly gonna literally fill in every single aspect of the tax returns. It was during tax season and they still had me checking every single tax return, and I'd say 60 to 70% of the time it made one error, at least one error, if not more. And so a lot of people, like you said, they think that AI is just this one and done. It's going to get rid of bookkeepers, going to get rid of accountants, whatever the case may be. But that is not going to happen. What I see happening is people who are leveraging AI are going to replace the ones that aren't. Not AI is going to replace all humans or replace all businesses. So I definitely agree with you there. Donna, I know that there are a lot of different bookkeeping firms out there. What would you say makes your approach different than maybe what a lot of small business owners are used to?
Well, a lot of bookkeepers, and I was one of these at the beginning, are what I call kitchen table bookkeepers, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of them will start off much like I did, where they're a single parent, or they need to be home, or they just think it's going to be something easy to go into, and they learn a program such as QuickBooks or Xero, and they figure since they know the program that they understand accounting. And that's not necessarily the case. The worst books I've seen have been either from CPAs or from bookkeepers that sat down at the kitchen table and they followed the tutorials for QuickBooks, and now they think that they are accountants. Even before I went back to school, I started back to school to get my accounting degrees in 2017
Yeah.
and just finished my second master's degree. So I have an MBA and a master's in accounting. So that's one thing that sets us apart is I have an MBA, I have a master's of accounting. My brother who works for me also has an MBA. So we're highly educated in business. But I think the kitchen table bookkeepers will sit down and they'll hang out their shingle and they'll say, I know how to do bookkeeping, and people will hire them. One example I can think of is a gentleman that I'm now fixing his books.
Yeah.
He hired a girl because her mother was a professor of accounting. And I laugh. I was like, my dad's an entomologist. I know nothing about bugs.
What's the correlation there?
Yeah, there's no correlation. Yes, my dad studies insects for a living and has my whole life, but that
Yeah,
doesn't mean I know anything about it.
totally. Yeah.
So I kind of rolled my eyes at that just because a member of their family is in accounting does not mean they know anything about accounting. And a lot of these bookkeepers are they're just not well informed. They don't know what's going on. They don't. Some of them don't know the difference between an expense and a liability, and why that's important. They have incomplete books. Um, they have, and like I said, the other offender is the CPA. You'd think they would be good at bookkeeping, but they're not. They are top-down, 30,000 feet view people, and you don't want them doing the day-to-day transactions. Of course, they're also
Exactly.
very expensive.
Oh yeah, 100%. Exactly. A lot of people think, a lot of small business owners that I speak with, they think that they could just, go to a CPA that's going to clean up their books, organize everything, and do their taxes and do everything. But that's not how you have to go to a qualified bookkeeper. They're going to get everything in order, and then you go to the CPA just for the taxes, is the opinion that I take. Um,
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I mean, CPA is usually the only designation that they know, because that's the one we talk about all the time. But I think a lot of business owners, they'll either fall for, my parent knows how to do this, or they will assume that it's so easy, which it is and it isn't, that they think that they know it. Yeah, accounting's been around a long time. Double entry bookkeeping's been around a long time. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty of getting into the books, we have a lot of problems with liabilities not being recorded, with not even all the assets being recorded. So we don't even have a clear view of how the business is performing.
yeah, absolutely. Donna, I'd like to shift gears here and kind of some advice for the audience. I know that you've built businesses, while raising kids, homeschooling, juggling life, everything like that, and that's not
Uh-huh.
easy. So, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs or even moms who are, building businesses from scratch and trying to balance everything that comes with that?
It's going to take 5 times longer than you think it would. It's
Mhm.
going to cost 10 times more, and it's going to be 100 times more satisfying if you can hang in there.
Yeah,
There's been times when I've had cash flow so bad that I had to go get loans. There's been times that I just couldn't work because I was sick. Because for a long time, I was the only person in the business. And so if I got sick and had to spend a day in bed, it was catastrophic. So have a disaster plan, from everything from you have a sick child and you need to pay attention to them to, what happens if your house burns down.
Hmm.
Um, I would say
Yeah.
it's probably the biggest thing. Plan for it to
Yeah.
be more expensive and take longer, and have a really good disaster plan.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think a lot of people, they have a set plan, and then when anything deviates from that plan, they get that doomsday feeling and they think it's all going wrong and everything like that. So kind of acknowledging that you have a lot to juggle and get your priorities straight. Like obviously the business is a priority, but your family and your kids definitely come first and give yourself some
Yeah.
slack, I guess, right?
I have a lot of really firm boundaries around where I'm spending my time. So I never take a client call before 9 o'clock my time. I'm in the Mountain Time Zone. I'm in Utah. Um, at 9:01, I'm happy to take all the calls. But at 8:59, I am trying to get my day ready. And I do that at the end of the day too. I have a firm stop at 5 o'clock. That doesn't mean I stop. It doesn't mean I don't work early mornings, and it doesn't mean I stop working at 5 o'clock, but that
Yeah.
is the window in which I communicate with my clients. We have somehow created a world where we're expected to be on call 24/7 with the smartphones and the computers, and now we have the capability to work from home.
Yeah.
And I think it's really harmful to your productivity and to everybody else in your life to try to be on 24/7. So I think having boundaries, office hours, one, it tells your clients that your time is valuable and they should not be wasting it. You only have 8 hours a day, or however long of an office time that you have to take care of everything that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And it also kind of gives you an out. So if you get to the end of the day and you say, I have a hard stop at 5 o'clock, I haven't had anyone argue with me about that. So I don't have clients then trying to schedule 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock meetings with me. I tell them hard stop at 5. And I also set expectations on how long does it usually take me to get an email responded to, so that they know what to expect.
Yeah. That's
And once you have those some boundaries in place that work with your life, we really do need a work-life balance. At least some. I mean, you can be the kind of person that sleeps in your office and works 24/7, but that doesn't mean you should be accessible to your clients 24/7.
Yeah, 100%. That's great advice, having that boundary. Because even for me, that actually just spoke to me because my mom the other day, she was like, I barely see you anymore. You're always working. And it feels like I'm working from morning till night and it's kind of all blending in. Not even know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing half the time, when it comes to going to family or doing things for myself. It just kind of feels like just like a blur of just working and kind of doing stuff in between and whatnot. So I definitely think that I'm gonna take that advice and block out days in my time where I need to just chill out or maybe go play some golf or something.
Yeah, it's kind of a challenge. My husband he's a sales guy. He was in finance for 30 years, and now he has a different business that he's gone into. And because he was in sales, he does not understand that 5 o'clock I'm done idea. And I've had to tell him, well, I also have, as a woman, I have the second shift, which means I finish with work and I have to start with the house. The house has to be kept clean. The
Yeah,
dishes need to be washed. Even though I work from home, I can't get that all done in a couple of breaks during the day.
yeah.
So I kind of keep pointing out to him, I'm a woman. I work around the clock.
Exactly, yeah. My mom is a my mom's a nurse and she'll come home and then still have like a second shift basically, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so just having that hard stop with the clients allows me to move into my family time and my other obligations. And, I have babies in my life that need to be held. And
Totally. 100%. And that's
so,
the point of everything, right? What's the
yeah,
point of all this work and all this business if you're not gonna focus on what matters?
yeah. And I absolutely love what I do, but I also love my family, my grandchildren. I just celebrated my youngest daughter's birthday and her younger brother's graduation from college last week.
Yeah.
And I just put it out to all my clients. I am out because these two things are way more important to me right in this moment
Yeah.
than your tax return.
Yeah.
We filed an extension. I'll get to your tax return.
100%. Yeah, that's I could not agree more. Yeah, I mean, personal things do come first, and a lot of people lose sight of that, especially like you said, in today's world with everything being so high tech and so on demand. It feels like we have to be super responsive, and we're not allowed to take breaks for ourselves and whatnot. And I think that we need to switch back to how it used to be, I guess. My dad used to tell me that he used to work, my dad is an electrical engineer, and he told me that he would work 9 to 5 and then clock out and forget about it and then go do stuff with his family, with his friends, and kind of enjoy life. Because yes, there are points in your life where you have to, put in extra work and work as much as you can and make sacrifices, but ultimately you're doing that for a reason.
Was the health inspector for the Seattle King County Health Department when I was
Mhm.
growing up, and there were times he was out really late at night.
Yeah.
But when he was home, and we didn't have to. Well, I remember helping him with his master's thesis a lot, but he has dyslexia. He can't spell, so I would have to spell words for him.
Yeah.
But other than that, when he was home, he was with us. He wasn't dragging in a briefcase. He wasn't trying to sit down and do more work. He was fully engaged with us. And that was kind of the thing I wanted to do with my own kids was
Yeah.
if I was during work hours, I was working, but during personal hours, I was with them.
Yeah. Just being intentional with what you're doing, regardless
Yeah.
of what it is. Yeah. Donna, what is next for Bookkeeping Made Simple? What do you have on the radar? Where are you looking to take it? Are you looking to just maintain what you have? Are you guys looking to grow? What is the
We're looking
plans?
to grow. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're actually looking for an office outside of my home. I've joked with my brother. He works for me. He works in the next bedroom, which is great because we're related.
Yeah.
But that's not the professional setting I want clients to be coming into. So we're looking for an office, and then we're looking to do some M&A and grow. We want to acquire some more firms. So we have some things in the works to make that happen.
Very nice, very nice. I look forward to hearing where you take that. Last question for you, Donna, and thank you so much for this conversation. It's been amazing so far. If you had to give one piece of advice to a small business owner who is drowning in the day-to-day and the financials, and he has a million things going on, maybe he doesn't have the time or she doesn't have the time to learn financials and take the time to understand everything, what would you say is the first thing that they should do to take the steps to changing things?
Well, they do need to learn their financials. So they need to find a good accountant who's going to work with them.
Yeah,
And they do need to strike that balance between just doing whatever the accountant says, because I've heard some really terrible advice from accountants, and figuring out some common sense. So if you, for example, if you have an accountant that tells you, oh, we don't need to file your tax return, but you made more than the minimum required to file, they're giving you bad advice.
yeah,
Or if they're saying you're an S corp owner, well, you take that $3.15 an hour in pay, but take the rest in perks. That's bad advice. That's the kind of advice that may land you in jail. So if you're not sure, if it seems a little too good to be true, run it past another accountant, even if it's at H&R Block. You call them and say, I heard this. Is this true? Or
yeah,
put it into Chat GPT, or call the IRS. The IRS is not our enemy. Those agents have a job to do. And if you call and ask them questions, they're happy to answer your questions. I've almost never had a problem talking to someone at the IRS. They've always been very gracious and personable to me. And if I said, I have a client with this problem, they've been more than happy to go over with me the tax ramifications or whatever needed to be discussed.
yeah.
So just because you've hired one accountant doesn't mean you cannot ask questions of another one. Most accountants, myself included, will give a free consultation. So I'm always happy to answer those questions, because if they are getting bad advice from their accountant, that means I might be able to get them as a client. And if they're getting good advice from their accountant, then I
Yeah.
want to support that accountant.
Totally. Yeah. That's actually something my dad always says in regards to the IRS is a lot of people think that they're this terrible organization that is malicious and whatnot. And yeah, maybe taxes in certain ways I do believe is theft. And in certain cases, not all taxes, that would be a ridiculous
Right?
thing to say. But my dad, he has no issue with the IRS. The other day when he had to do his tax return, I guess he owed a few $1,000s and he called them up and said, hey, like this is my situation. I need to go on a payment plan. And they worked with him. They allowed him to, set up a payment plan and they were super cool about it.
Uh-huh.
And so I think a lot of people kind of need to realize that you can work with them and they're not here to suck every penny of you dry.
The only time I've heard of them really being nasty is if they have to find you. If you're calling them and saying, I have a problem, I need your help, they're delighted to help. If they have to come find you,
They'll
they're
find you
not going to
anywhere.
be as nice.
And they'll find you anywhere
They
you are.
will.
They will
They
find you.
will.
Donna, this has been a very good conversation. I appreciate you sharing your insights and your story. And before we wrap up, where's the best place that the listeners can find you if they want to connect with you or learn more about your business or anything like that?
Our website's at mysimplebookkeeping.com, and my email address is donna@mysimplebookkeeping.com. And we have a phone number, 801-20032. They're more than welcome to reach out, text, call, email. I'm more than happy to share my expertise.
Amazing. All right. Well, we'll drop all the links in the show notes. And anyone who's listening who has messy books and needs them cleaned up, there's going to be no one better than Donna. So please go check her out. Thank you, Donna. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Noah. It was
Of
great to
course.
talk to you.